Hi there, stampers and crafters. My name is Tami White from stampwithtami.com, and welcome to our online class where today we're going to be making Easter cards, really pretty Easter cards, and we're using the Easter Blessing stamp set from Stampin' Up, and I'm going to be focusing on the Whisper White Craft Ink Pad. This is a little bit different than our classic line, so I'm going to explain why it's a little bit different. We're going to share some really cool tips and some cool techniques that you can do with this craft ink pad and why it should be a staple in your collection. I'm also going to show you how to ink it because it is a little bit different and it comes uninked. So that is something that I get asked often, and I thought let's do a little class and let's share how cool this ink pad is. So we will be making these cards right here. And they are really easy and fun. We'll also be doing some heat embossing. So before we get started, just a couple of quick things as a thank you for joining our online class. Whether you're live or watching a replay, I have 2 hostess sets from Stampin' Up to give away. You can only earn these free with Stampin' Rewards, so they're a little hard to get. They are called Believe You Can. I have 2 of them. I will draw one winner immediately following the live, and I'll draw one winner on March 27th. All you need to do to enter is leave a comment here on the video on either my Facebook or YouTube channels. And if you share this broadcast onto social media, share our stamping class, you will, and type the word share into the comments on either YouTube or Facebook, you'll be entered a second time. And the other thing I want to make you aware of is there is only like 2 weeks left to Celebration. This is, I feel like, you know, in the beginning, it feels like, oh, we have plenty of time, but now it's coming down to the wire. Things are starting to sell out. Celebration is that most wonderful time where every penny you spend in my online store collects, and if you have a $50 order, you get free stuff. And that's on top of my frequent buyer program. And if you are in my VIP online club, you get added bonuses there too. Everything's combined. You can triple your free stuff there. But anyways, for Celebration, for every $50, you get a free product of your choice. And also, if you join during Celebration, it's such a great deal. $125 for $99. You get free shipping. You get a free stamp set during Celebration. You get a free mini paper cutter during Celebration. And you get a free paper pack. And a free paper pumpkin. I mean, that's more free stuff than it actually costs. But that's all ending at the end of this month on March 31st. So don't wait. And also, you can do that demo kit just for the discount. I also want to point out, so far, these 3 Celebration products have sold out. And I do expect more to sell out quickly. I know everybody is running to the store today to stock up on coronavirus supplies for everybody that's going to be quarantined. And the crafting supplies apply there because you need something to do while you're in there. So I do expect a lot of things to be selling out quickly during Celebration. So I wouldn't wait till the last minute to get what you want. Plus, you want something to do while you're home. Okay, so let's get started. I'm really excited about these cards, and I think that you are really going to enjoy making them. They're all very easy. Oops, and there goes the comments on the floor. So while you're enjoying the cards here, let me pick up the phone so I can see your comments. I feel like lately it's not an online class unless I drop something on the floor. Klutz. Okay, you're back. I got your comments. And if you have any questions, if you're watching live, I'll hopefully be able to see them and answer them while we're live. And if not, I can always do after. So this is the stamp set that we'll be creating these cards with. And this is a free tutorial. I'm sorry, it's a free PDF for this video tutorial. It accompanies it. It's got all of the measurements. I'll be using the stick rectangle dies for our layers today, but if you do not have these dies, I have the measurements on this PDF that you could alternate and use, so you can cut them to those measurements. In addition, I have all of the supplies that we're using, and I will also have the video that we are creating right now live will be on this resource page, and all you need to do to get there is go to this URL that's also on this resource page, or I mean free PDF, or use the smart code that's down here. All right, let's get started. And we're going to start with that Whisper White ink pad because this is one of the coolest ink pads. Right now, there used to be a time when we actually had all of our colors, the Stampin' Up! Colors came in both classic ink and craft ink, but now we just have Whisper White. But what's cool about that is you can actually use the Whisper White ink refill and mix it with colors to make the different colors, so it's kind of cool. So we have 2 different types. Most of our ink pads are our classic line. And the difference is the classic line of ink pads is water-based. It dries very quickly. It comes in all of our colors, so it coordinates with designer paper, cardstock, the markers, embellishments, etc. Everything matches. And it cleans very easily. You can use the Stampin' Scrub and Mist, or you can use the new Simple Chamois. However, the classic ink, being water-based, if you stamp it on a darker color like black or Night of Navy, doesn't matter what color it is, it's not going to show. It's just going to kind of blend right in. If you have a lighter cardstock, you might get a little bit of, you'll see some of the darker colors on the lighter cardstock, but not vice versa. What's different about the craft ink is that it's a pigment ink. So our Whisper White right now is our only ink pad that is a Whisper ink. I'm sorry, a pigment ink. Oh my gosh, I'm just tongue-tied today. This is a thicker ink and it dries slower, which enables us to do a little bit more with it. It means we can emboss with it, heat emboss with it. We can do some other cool techniques with it because of that factor, but also it is going to show up on dark cardstock because it's thick and it sits on top. It's archival safe. It can be used in scrapbooking. It can be used on wood. It can be used on fabric. You would want to clean this with a Stampin' Mist and Scrub, although you could clean your stamps with the chamois. I don't think they clean as much as the Mist and Scrub. I would recommend that to clean your stamp. And because it is super thick, it will need to be re-inked more often. And that is another different thing about this ink pad, is that when you purchase the ink pad, it actually comes with a re-inker, an ink pad refill. So our classic pads each have refills that are available, but they come separately. So usually when you get a regular classic pad, you won't need a refill for a little while. It takes a little while for that to start fading unless you use it all the time. But the white actually comes uninked. So this is a brand new ink pad. There is no ink on this whatsoever. I've got nothing here. We have got an ink pad refill, and this, what I'm about to show you, this technique can be used on the regular ink pads as well. But you probably won't need quite as much ink when you're re-inking the regular ones. So I'm taking this refill and I am squirting it all over the top of this pad. And because this is a brand new pad, the first time I do this, I'm going to want a lot. But when you refill, like after you've done it the first time, you're probably not going to need quite so much. But you want that to sink in there really good. So now I'm taking a bone folder, and I don't even have enough on there. See how that's streaking? We need more. We need lots more. We're going to press that in there. And because this is a pigment thick ink, you're probably going to need to re-ink it more often than, I'm going to press that right in there. You're probably going to need to re-ink it more often than your classic ink pads. In fact, it depends on where you live, how humid it is, how dry it is. If you live in a drier climate, you'll need to re-ink it more often. Where I live, it's fairly humid, but I still find myself re-inking this almost every time I use it. Not quite as much as we're doing right now, though. It's much easier to re-ink it the second time, but we want to get that in there good. So I'm going to put a couple of layers in there, and I got some on the side. So, oh my gosh, right now in the store, I could sell this for like $100, those wet wipes. I could stand outside of the grocery store with those wet wipes and probably make a killing. Don't tell anybody I have it. I'm afraid people are going to start banging on my door. All right, so I'm just going to put one more layer on here, get it good and inked. Now, again, this dries a little bit quicker. I mean, a little bit slower than the classic. If you were re-inking a classic pad, you'd want to act a little bit quicker, just because that sinks right into the classic pad. And I'm just evening it out here with the bone folder. You know what, I am going to put just a little bit more. I see a couple of spots there. I'm going to put a little bit more in there. I want it to have a lot of ink in it. The juicier it is to start, I feel like the less you have to re-ink it. And if you missed any of the information on this ink pad that I just shared, I did post it all on the resource page, so you can go back there and check it out. I think we are ready to get started with this. And then I'll just, boom, done. All right, so let's get started with our stamping. So one beautiful thing about the the pigment ink being thick and drying slower is that we can use it for heat embossing. So I have cut the layers of our cards using the rectangle square dies here. And again, on that PDF, I have the measurements in case you don't have these dies to cut it with. You can easily recreate this card just by simply cutting them. Oops. The other thing is you don't want to get, as I just dropped my card in there, you don't want to get this on your clothes because it will stay there. But craft ink is permanent ink. All right, so I'm using this to heat emboss with. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up our Happy Easter stamp. Ah, I almost forgot this. Who's out there yelling, don't forget the emboss buddy in the background. So I'm rubbing the embossing buddy over there just to keep the static down so that when we pour the heat emboss powder over this, we won't get it stuck in places we don't want it. So I'm stamping the Happy Easter first, and then I'm stamping our flowers. I stamped the words first so that I could line the flowers up. Are these crocuses? At first I thought they were lilies, but then I was looking at them. I think they might be crocuses. Very pretty. So I just stamped that 3 times across. The first one I did it up a little bit higher, and the rest of them I kind of went a little bit lower. I'm just going to put that aside for now. We are going to bring it back out in a second. But we are going to do some heat embossing now. So I'm just going to take my same little grid paper here. And I've got some white Stampin' Emboss powder. Go ahead. Oh my gosh, I am totally a mess today. I'm going to pour that right over the top. Did you see what just happened? I'm going to flick off the excess. I picked up the jar and just totally dumped it all over my table. I'm not going to clean this up at the moment. Nobody gasp. I will play with that later after this video. You think you're the only one that does stuff like this? You are not. So just pouring the excess of that embossing powder right back into the jar. I feel like I have remnants of it all over the table, so I'm just going to wipe that down real quick. Okay, so first thing we're doing is heat embossing with that Whisper White. But you saw when I stamped on that craft that it stayed. You think they're daffodils, Jean? Yeah, you know what? You're right. They could be daffodils. You saw that you could see it, the color on there. So you can see color better. You can stamp that white on dark colors. It stays thicker longer, so you can heat emboss with it like we're about to do. You can also mix it with our colored ink pad refills to get different colors. Oh, we have some chatter whether we're crocuses or whether they're daffodils. I suppose that could be anything you want. I mean, you know, artistic. We have some artistic license so we could make the flowers whatever we want them to be. I apologize here. I wish I had warmed up the heat tool before I started, which I do normally do for you guys, so it doesn't take quite so long to get started. All right, so once we have that all heat embossed, we're going to say that's good. The next cool thing I'm going to do here is some watercoloring with the white craft pad. True story, you can do this. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here, and I'll take a fresh piece of scrap paper. So I'm going to take that ink pad that I just inked up. I'm sorry, this was I should have flicked a little bit better when I went back in. And then I'm going to do that trick we do with the classic ink pads where we squeeze the center. And I'm going to squeeze it a little bit better than I just did because I didn't get any on that. So the other thing that you can do instead of squeezing the center, and there is a little bit on there, it's very hard to see. Instead of squeezing the center trick is that you can actually take this refill and put a drop even in the lid and use that for the watercoloring. So I've got an aqua painter. I'm going to pick up, actually that's too wet. I don't want it as wet. And then I'm just going to paint on our flowers. Paint the white right on there. And that's it. That's all there is to this. And then when it dries, it's soft, it's beautiful. Very, very cool. It is Friday the 13th, Linda. Thank you. That explains everything. That totally explains my day. Friday the 13th. Why didn't I even think of that? And so I'll just do that all the way across. And then when I'm done, I'm going to put some Stampin' Dimensionals on the back of this and layer it. And we have our first card. That's it. That's all there was to that. And then I took just a couple of these pearl adhesives. They're self-adhesive, and I stuck them right there in the flowers just to give it a little something extra. Very delicate, very easy, very pretty. For the next card, I'm going to do a little bit of fun here. Again, cut these with the stitched rectangle dies. So again, you can cut them with you can paper cut them too if you didn't have that. Okay, and I am going to start with the Big Shot cutting on this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the stitched labels die and I'm going to cut this out. This is our main thing. So I cut that out of Crumb Cake because that's the color that we're using. And then this stitched labels die has this really cool, and if you have this die and you haven't used it yet, you're probably wondering what this is. This is actually, it cuts out like a little inset here. It doesn't cut out like a die cut piece, but it gives you texture on the background, and it's very hard to see on this dark color, but you'll see it much easier when I do it on the Crumb Cake. So you're going to take your die cut machine. Try not to put it in that pile of embossing powder that I just spilled everywhere. I've already pre-cut this with the stitch shapes. Oh, wrong panel. My bad. It's the smaller one I wanted. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is, and this, I mean, it was originally designed just to be part of a background, but I'm actually going to use it to create the whole background here. So I'm going to try to line it up so it covers, and it doesn't need to be lined up perfectly. I found it works just fine even if everything's not perfect. So you can see the texture on that. See how cool it is? So what I did was then I went straight across here. Actually, in this one I'm going to turn it straight up and down. So again, doesn't need to line up perfectly. It's okay if you overlap. It's okay if you miss a couple of pieces in the middle there. We're going to cover that anyways. So then I just went around the whole entire panel. 4 times did it. I mean, sometimes if you wanted to, you could do it 5 to fill in the gaps. But then I got the whole background textured with this piece. And through the magic, I have one done already. So in addition to that, I took a sponge and that Whisper White ink pad, and I sponged the edge of this to get that sponging look on the edge there. And then I went and heat embossed our image on the label, the stitched label die there. And on that one, I took these words and the cross from the Easter Blessing stamp set. And I'm going to go ahead and dip that in that ink and sponge around the edges of that too. And then I'm going to sponge around the edges of all the panels on this card. And then I'm just going to take some Stampin' Dimensionals. The texture does make it pretty cool, doesn't it? Make sure you stock up on your adhesives. When you're stocking up on your quarantine craft kits, make sure that you stock up on adhesives. I was thinking cardstock, and then somebody mentioned adhesives, and I went, oh, shoot. I'm like, I think I need snail. I better hurry up and get that in there before it sells out. Kidding. I'm kidding. Well, I'm not kidding, but anywho, so sponged around all the edges of that, and we layered our panels with Stampin' Dimensionals. And then place that right on top. And then the final step on this one, I took those pearls. I took some of the smaller ones, medium-sized one, and put a couple right down the bottom. I don't know, I felt like it needed 3. The original only had 2, but I felt like this one needed 3. Of course, the third one's going to give me a hard time. It's not always the way. And our card is complete. And that is all there is to creating this set of cards. That's it. Some Whisper White crafting pad. There's not even any snail on these cards, actually. I put that on the supply list, but it's actually just Stampin' Dimensionals that put everything together. So all I did there was I stamped with the white craft pad, heat embossed with some white embossing powder, and then we watercolored with the white craft ink pad and sponged around the edges. So there's some cool techniques that you can do with that Whisper White ink pad. Because it shows up on the dark cardstock, it is, I feel, a staple in your collection. I feel like this is one of the, right along with the black ink pad and probably Early Espresso and Old Olive, I feel like those are absolutely must-have ink pads, and Whisper White is definitely a must-have because all of a sudden it makes so many things more useful because you can stamp on that dark cardstock with it. All right, you could also mix this with our ink pads. You can take, you can either use this or I think we still sell the spots, and we can mix that with our colored ink pads, and then you can emboss with any color ink pad refills. You can emboss with any color, but that is an episode for another day. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I do have all of the information on the differences on the classic and craft ink pads on the resource page that is linked in this video's description. All right, well, thanks for joining me today. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you back here on Tuesday.